Okay, members. The next item of business is an all-party motion on International Women's Day 2025. Clerk, please read the motion.
That this Assembly welcomes the theme of Accelerate Action for International Women's Day 2025, recognises that focusing on the need to accelerate action emphasises the importance of taking swift and decisive steps to achieve gender equality, and supports increased momentum and urgency in addressing the systemic barriers and biases that women face both in personal and professional spheres.
Thank you. And I call Claire Sugden to move the motion on behalf of the Women's Caucus.
I beg to move.
Thank you for that. The Business Committee has agreed to allow up to 1 hour for this debate. The proposer of the motion will have 10 minutes to propose and 10 minutes to wind. All other speakers will have 5 minutes. Please open the debate on the motion.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. As the current chairperson of the Northern Ireland Assembly Women's Caucus, it is my privilege to move this motion. This motion is the second of this mandate to be tabled by the caucus, which is a united cross-party forum made up of all current MLAs. It aims to address the underrepresentation of women in politics in Northern Ireland and highlight the importance of women in public life. The theme for International Women's Day 2025 is Accelerate Action, a call to action to advance and celebrate women's equality worldwide. Accelerate Action has been chosen because at the current rate of progress it will take until 2158, which is roughly 5 generations from now, to reach full gender parity, according to data from the World Economic Forum. We want to lend our voice and use our positions as elected representatives to push for collective action and shared ownership for driving gender parity. International Women's Day has been around for over 100 years, as many of the issues that are still impacting women's advancement. The world rightly now expects diversity, equality and inclusion. The world notices its absence and celebrates its presence. We have come a long way in regards to representation of women in political life in Northern Ireland, but we have not come far enough. The Good Friday Agreement contained a clause that affirmed the right of women to full and equal political participation, but women remain underrepresented in all spheres of political life, at the Assembly, at Westminster and at local government. Today, our count of women MLAs reaches 40%, Northern Ireland MPs 28%, and councillors approximately 26%. This is not adequate representation. The political landscape must not put women at a disadvantage. Our political systems must be reflective of the people they represent. It would be remiss of me not to welcome the fact that for the first time the majority, 58% of those who sit at the Executive Committee table are women. It has also been recognised that the Northern Ireland Assembly has a notable increase in female representation, rising from 13% in 1998 to 36% in 2022. And we know that women's full and meaningful political participation in public life helps advance gender equality as a whole. However, we need to address the structural barriers to this. The caucus is working to address this marginalisation by focusing on what the barriers are and working to create a targeted action to break those barriers down, and work towards a vision of Northern Ireland where women are equally represented in politics. On the 11th of February 2025, the caucus hosted a networking event here in Parliament Buildings, and we welcomed women local councillors from across Northern Ireland. It allowed us to share lived experiences, which is the key to understanding how to address underrepresentation to women in politics, to identify what needs to be done to attract more women into politics, and how we can support more women in political advancement. It is evident that support for other women, and notably that cross-party solidarity amongst women, is increasing. Our own Women's Caucus is an example of that, and today we bring forward this motion, united across party lines. The potential here is transformative for this Assembly and for Northern Ireland. I truly feel uplifted when I hear the passion for making a difference to local communities, and you hear that from our female representatives. However, in sharing our pathways, it was very clear that there are barriers faced by many women on their political journey. Some included the hateful abuse and negative comments via social media and other online platforms, and there's more we can do there. Personal safety is also a very real concern. Work-life balance with a focus on challenges presented trying to juggle caring responsibilities. Politics needs to be seen achievable for those with caring responsibilities. The lack of adequate maternity leave for elected representatives. Council and parliamentary structures, such as the infrastructure, culture, operations, methods of works, can be a real and perceived barrier to full participation. When this building was designed, it was designed by a man and wasn't mindful of the fact that one day there would be women here. We need to change that. We need to change that in 2025. A lack of training available to elected representatives can also lead to a feeling of isolation and imposter syndrome. I'm sure every woman in this room has felt imposter syndrome, citing that confidence is gained through experience and support. But we can't get that experience and support if we're not here doing the job. Last Friday, I attended the Women's Parliament, and again, the passion and commitment that was coming from women leaders within society was really evident here in this chamber and Parliament buildings. They shared their lived experiences, and they wanted to debate the issues that matter to them and the people that they represent within their communities. And some of the key areas that were highlighted were violence against women and girls, affordable childcare, unpaid work, and again, caring responsibilities. We have rehearsed many of these concerns in this chamber over the years. We've rehearsed them over the last number of days and weeks. But now we must see real, tangible change, and we must use our voices to raise each other up, because we can benefit that unity of approach. We as a caucus recognise that the challenges faced by women remain the same, including juggling work and home, the need for maternity leave and childcare, the problem of gender-based abuse and isolation, resilience and self-confidence. And the political landscape must not put women at a disadvantage. Our political systems must be reflective of the people they represent, and we are committed to working as far as possible to address the structural barriers to women's full participation in public life. And we are committed to an assembly that is accessible to women and that facilitates equality of participation. We have agreed recently to take forward a gender-sensitive audit, and we look forward to seeing this work progress throughout this year. We know that to deliver real change, we must think beyond the caucus, and we must all work together to combine support, resources and political will. We want to work in partnership with those wishing to support women that want to become further involved in politics, and we want to play our part to support and enable women to take that leap into political life. We know there is no shortage of potential political representatives and leaders. The Women's Parliament just like last week was evidence of that. But we want to do what we can to nurture that potential into action and progression, and when they get here, ensure that they stay. And as a caucus, we want to support the women who are already elected to this Assembly. We want to make sure that women MLAs have access to ongoing learning and development opportunities. We also are very keen on learning from our counterparts in other regions of the UK and Ireland, learning and sharing how it's done elsewhere and bringing that knowledge back so that everyone can benefit from it. Today, I urge you as the Assembly to fully support this motion, because together we can accelerate action for gender equality. I commend this motion to the House.
Thank you. And I call Aisling Riley.
Kate Bilbragad Laskin Corla. Agus magic torch I or la international de na man, but why lorch or couple hour a winning libra go generalta. Go foil a fihe cuig to barna on idir pa na man agus pa navar agus Neil Shaw and Glacha to fan a defrilla or Shaw. Ta wad nis mo mra na fur a gubber go part Amshire. Being vra sauce a garma a glacu le clan a hogal. Nis mo mra ag torch ara da gini sa wala go generalta. Agus to dulgus or coglacti agriacti na barney Shaw a gridgem agus corham na fenya a horch the vra fud na chira. Tan feminist ag upper sa trosha fosta, frige and codgy le costish curum lani mar hampla. As mra is mo a tasawala ag torch curum de lani agus current shaw back rumpi o hi fostiacta, tahi agus golton ken garma agus sujuri ardu pa. To strata slancha or lay de ye de mra. Athni and nis mo dini go will yarga or strata slancha na man a yerian is jack or gefriacti inchna. Agus ar horhi slancha jarfaha de colony agus de vra. Curran falcha riven plan grieve or slancha na man a dogur and tara slancha. Ac de stratish or lay de ye. a bhfuil muoinú agus takeíocht buinteach leis. Is feib leithreach all war í seo fórigan in ein na man in éireann agus níos fuide anon. Sna sé chundé, seo ceann den na háitine is contratí de bhrá san Europa. Dar náid tá stratais ar leith a bheim le TEO agus tá muoinú curtha ar fáil don na cóirlaí áitiúla inis le gala mac grúpi. Leis an airgad seo curfar chláranna idithis, ceardlanna, aisinna practicula ar fáil agus níos mó a réis. Caithir gacran árneal agus cuild dar bobbal inúireacht a ghlacu as an obair seo a chur a bheim nó go dóchaí dóin ina bhfuil ahan chalín agus bán slábailte agus más orthú. Mar agal scur, tá mrá fósaigh tóirt ar na tapaí luite. Mar anna dé a pobl, caithigh Virginia ibrú go Diane le na bacaní seo a bhrisú síos agus sóthaí níos cothrama a cruthú. Lá idirnáisiúnta na man sonna Dave Galéir, Janimid Kelleru ar an lá seo ar an dul chun cin agus coinmuid dearin ag brú chun ahraithe. Gur maigad.
Thank you. I call Cheryl Brownlee.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Today, as we gather to mark International Women's Day 2025 under the theme Accelerated Action, it is not just a slogan, it is a call to urgently demand real and immediate progress in achieving gender equality. It is a recognition that while change is happening, it is not happening fast enough. For too long, we have spoken about gender equality as a distant goal, something we aspire to achieve in the future. But the future cannot wait. Women and girls across Northern Ireland continue to face barriers in their personal and professional lives. And as the motion before us rightly highlights, we must increase the momentum and urgently tackle these challenges. If we're serious about gender equality, we must ask what is holding us back. The answer is pay gaps, workplace discrimination, unequal access to leadership, the high cost of childcare, family and caring responsibilities, gender-based violence, online abuse, all remain very real and pressing issues. Here in Northern Ireland, women still remain underrepresented in politics and business, although there has been significant progress. The cost of childcare remains a significant barrier to career progression. Too often, women are more likely to be in lower paid or part-time work. And I know from my own personal experience that without support for childcare, there would be no way that I would be in this building. It allowed me to continue my studies at uni and enter employment. Without that support, I would definitely not be here today. So we must ensure that every woman and girl has those same opportunities, whether it's study, work, to lead or to succeed. International Women's Day is a time to celebrate women's achievements and highlight the incredible contributions women make in all aspects of life, particularly in areas where they have been historically underrepresented. In sport, we have seen phenomenal role models such as Rachel Blackmore, the first female jockey to win the Grand National, proving that women belong at the very highest level of all competitions. Or locally, Marissa Callaghan, captain of the Northern Ireland women's football team, who has been an inspiration, leading her team to the first ever major tournament. In STEM, Northern Ireland is home to pioneering scientists and engineers, like Professor Tara Moore, a world-leading researcher. And women like her are paving the way for more young girls to see science and innovation as a career path they should and they can pursue. We have so many who have challenged these stereotypes, broken down barriers and paved the way for future generations, and we're incredibly proud of them all. As we mark International Women's Day, we must commit to accelerating this action, not just today, but every day. We must ensure the next generation of women and girls grow up in a world where equality is not just an aspiration, but a reality. Today, we remember the incredible women, our mothers, our grandmothers, our sisters, our friends, who work tirelessly in the home, in business, in politics, in sport, in science, shaping our future for us all. Thank you.
Thank you. Conor Egan.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise today to join other women around this chamber ahead of International Women's Day this Saturday on the theme of Accelerate Action. This motion highlights the absolute necessity of taking decisive steps to achieve gender equality and the need to address systemic barriers which exclude women from being able to reach the fullest of their potential. I am glad we've brought this motion on an all-party basis and can come together for International Women's Day with a call to action. Women play an absolutely vital role in our society, all whilst living in one of the most dangerous places to be a woman in Western Europe. 20 domestic homicides in Northern Ireland with a female victim since 2020. And recent research from the Ulster University found that 98% of women here have experienced at least one form of gender-based violence or abuse in their lifetime. This is entirely despicable and needs changed. How can we expect women to live and thrive when they are trying so hard to just survive? This Chamber has not shied away from these challenges, and the launching of the strategic framework to end violence against women and girls in September 2024, alongside the domestic and sexual abuse prevention strategy, is very welcome progress. With that being said, I think we can all agree there's still so much more to do, and we cannot lose the momentum behind these goals. That is why it was so welcome that tackling gender-based violence has remained a core priority of the Northern Ireland Executive in the finalised programme for government, published only this week. But the theme of this year's International Women's Day rings true. We cannot stagnate, become complacent in, or pause our progress when there are still so many challenges ahead. We must accelerate our action and keep going. This is not just a job for women alone. This is a job for everyone across society. This is not a job for the justice system alone, ensuring justice is delivered when these harms occurs. Whilst that is integral, every minister, department and elected representative has a role in preventing sexism, abuse and misogyny from even happening in the first place. Everyone in our society has a responsibility and can play a role in shifting culture and leading change. Accelerating action looks like supporting women and girls into leadership, decision-making, business and STEM, all areas of society where they are underrepresented. It looks like transforming our healthcare system, so no matter your gender, you can receive the healthcare you need. It's elevating women's achievements in sports and actively bringing them into hard-to-break-into sectors. But it's also making sure the environments they're in are safe and adaptable to them. We need to challenge the pervasive culture of misogyny rife in our society. In the Secondary School Students' Union 2022 report, 70.6% of pupils said they did not believe sexism was being taken seriously enough in our schools. These are children trying to grow and learn and become who they want to be, but faced with yet another barrier to do that. The online space as well is constantly growing and uncontrollable. We need to work together with colleagues from other nations to ensure its regulation. All of this reinforces the responsibility on us as legislators and the need for intervention and prevention work across all sections of society. I see trailblazers leading the way in my own constituency and community of North Down, working personally to economically empower women to live their fullest potential. I think about North Down and Ard's Women's Aid and Kilcully Women's Centre, supporting women in crisis and those who need access to multiple agencies to secure their safety. But I also think about our local leaders and women in arts venues, in churches, in community groups and in schools who are consistently showing up and making spaces more inclusive every day. I and my party are dedicated to ensuring women from all backgrounds have the support needed to succeed, and we are keen to work with as many people and parties around this chamber to ensure this actually does happen. Thank you.
Thank you. And I call Diane Armstrong.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I rise to speak in support of the 2025 International Women's Day campaign theme Accelerate Action, and to thank the Chair of the Women's Caucus and members for bringing this motion today. Despite progress in recent years, and as others have alluded to, women still face significant barriers and biases, particularly in areas such as employment, caregiving responsibilities, gender norms and violence against women. Excuse me. In the Northern Ireland Assembly, we have seen remarkable progress in women's political participation. Today, as women, we have a First Minister and Deputy First Minister, 3 ministers, 2 junior ministers, but we also have 36 women MLAs in total, almost 40% of all MLAs, and this is progress. In my own constituency of Fermanagh and South Tyrone, 4 out of the 5 MLAs are female, and it's great to see Anya here as well. But there is still much more work to do towards 50-50 representation reflective of demographics in Northern Ireland. Indeed, I am the only female MLA in my party which is a shame as I know so many vibrant, successful women in our party who could make a great contribution in this place, and they'd be welcome here. Women's voices are important in shaping the society we all want to live in, so the challenge for all of us here today is to lead and create the conditions so that others will follow into leadership and decision-making roles, so that women's voices are equally represented. As women, I think we all know that our gender still faces disparities in the workplace and career progression. Women feel the challenge in their careers when they choose to start a family, with the knock-on effect this may have on pay and progression. The Northern Ireland Statistics and Research Agency reports that 67.9% of women are in part-time employment, and that about 31% of working-age women are economically inactive, often due to caring or family commitments. It is profoundly shocking that Northern Ireland has the highest rate of economic inactivity among women in the UK, and a contributory factor has to be that we do not have adequate and affordable childcare provision to support women in the workplace. Also, women who have given up their careers to take on caring responsibilities find that if and when they re-enter the workplace, they will have lost skills, career progression paths, and important pension contributions for their future financial security. This is grossly unfair. Deep-rooted gender norms continue to influence women's opportunities and choices. Women remain underrepresented in STEM subjects, partly due to gendered expectations in education and career guidance. However, the recent provision of apprenticeships in these sectors, aimed specifically at female intakes, is a positive and constructive development. Violence against women remains a major issue. In Northern Ireland alone, there were over 33,000 recorded domestic abuse incidents in 2023, constituting 20% of all reported crimes. Alarmingly, Northern Ireland is still one of the most dangerous places in Western Europe to live as a woman, with 20 women killed as a result of domestic homicides since 2020. As the change makers in this place, we must also ensure that we are working for a better and safer future for all. I would hope that our contributions today will encourage even more women to step up and make their voices be heard, whether that is in the political arena, in business, community, or civic society. When women thrive, Northern Ireland thrives. I would just like to thank each and every one of the speakers here today, all powerful and passionate testimonies from women fighting for their communities every day, a real demonstration of the strength and determination of women across Northern Ireland. Thank you.
Thank you. And the call Sinead McLaughlin.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I would like to begin by thanking the members of the Women's Caucus for bringing this motion to the floor today in recognition of International Women's Day 2025. I would also like to thank all those that are members or form part of the all-party group of Women, Peace and Security, which I have had the pleasure of chairing. Those members will know that the APG recently met with senior officials from the Foreign Office to discuss the need to engage with women stakeholders on gender inequality and the role of paramilitarism. While the meeting was constructive, there was a feeling that change had not been quick enough. And I think that that's the feeling across the board when it comes to gender equality, and that we've come a huge way in the last few decades, but much work remains to be done. In that sense, I'm glad that this year's theme for International Women's Day is to accelerate action. Data from the World Economic Forum suggests that if we are to continue on our current rate of progress, it will take until 2158, roughly 5 generations from now, to reach full gender parity. I don't think the world will be in the same level of existence then as it is currently now. But that's really one of the big reasons why we need to accelerate. In fact, the UK has recently been knocked back, we learned this week, by 1 place to 18th in the Women at Work Index due to our sluggish pace of change on women's earnings relative to men's, and that's just a disgrace in 2025. Here in Northern Ireland, we see firsthand how gender equality has continued to worsen due to the lack of government action. That's particularly true, for example, when it comes to our childcare crisis. Every day, parents, but particularly women, are being forced out of the workplace due to childcare fees that are far outstripping their earnings. It's just one of the many ways in which women can still be disadvantaged in Northern Ireland in 2025. These concerns have been raised by the Equality Commission, which has made a number of recommendations focused on tackling gender stereotypes in childcare. They recommended the introduction of coordinated, comprehensive and coherent measures to tackle gender-based stereotypes and attitudes from an early age right across all areas in life. And they also recommended the need for acceptance and recognition of a gender emphasis of both women and men taking childcare responsibilities. Of course, these recommendations are also more widely applicable. If we are to accelerate action towards gender equality, then we must accept the role men have in addressing the stereotypes which have divided us for too long. That should include comprehensive reform to education, relationship and sex education in our schools, as well as leadership from the top. Men in privileged positions, including colleagues in this chamber, should seek to use their influence to echo messages of equality and lead by example among their peers. Doing so should help trigger the transformative change towards gender equality. The truth is, Mr Deputy Speaker, without the role of women, Northern Ireland would not be in the place it is now. During our Troubles, women were at the forefront of calling for and working towards a lasting peace agreement. This was personified by our own Bridge Rogers, who recently celebrated her 90th birthday. During this celebration, I took some time to reflect on her work. A strong campaigner for peace, Bridge played a crucial role in peace talks. In November 1999, Bridge became one of only 2 women to serve as ministers in the first power-sharing executive. Bridge, like many of her female counterparts during the period, refused to be held back by stereotypical views on gender and a woman's role in society. It is time we followed her example and did the same. No one is going to address the issues that we face. And that is why we need to lead the charge and why we must accelerate action towards addressing gender equality. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
And thank you. Members, as this is Aoife Finnegan's first opportunity to speak as a private member, I would remind the Assembly that it is the convention that an inaugural speech is made without interruption. I call Aoife Finnegan.
Gurmayagat, Elesh Cancorlia. Is more an honourlum Lowert on court and channel in you August Lowert and Sean a run Tawati Shaw Lina in Yarthar International Thandaman and Comoru. Is more in privilege lum is shin in Yanu Lilin Mokoj Oraja in Isbrach channel mar Koharcha channel don August Ardwaha. It is a privilege to do my first contribution to this Assembly debate as an MLA for Newry and Armagh. I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge my predecessor, Conor Murphy. Conor has spent over 40 years dedicating his life to the Republican struggle, delivering real change for workers, families and communities in Newry and Armagh. And I know he will continue that great work in the Seanad, championing the cause for Irish unity. I am a proud South Armagh woman, and I take immense pride in representing the people of my constituency. My focus will be delivering for workers, families and communities in areas like education, health and access to public services. Our rural border communities have been neglected by successive British governments, with decades of Tory austerity leaving places like South Armagh behind. I will ensure that those voices are heard louder and clearer than ever before. A key priority for me will be the delivery of the much-needed school enhancement programme for St Patrick's Primary School, Gaelscoil Fáideach Naofa in Crishmaclennan. The school has long served our community with dedication, but it now faces significant challenges due to outdated infrastructure and inadequate facilities. I will work tirelessly so that the children and staff in Crossmaglen and in schools throughout Newry and Armagh have the opportunity to thrive in a fit-for-purpose, modern school accommodation
that provide safe and supportive learning environments. I will also focus my efforts on ensuring that rural schools and rural communities across Newry and Armagh remain high on the agenda. Our schools are at the heart of our communities, and they must receive the support they need to provide the best possible education for our children. This is why I am proud to stand with Sinn Féin, the party that is leading the way for real change. And in the context of International Women's Day, I am particularly proud to be part of a team where over half our MLAs are women. These incredible women, leaders, activists and public representatives, inspire me every day to stand up against injustice and fight against the inequalities that partition has imposed upon our island. Jack Nish Erin Run Atha Osa Gomer. Women have played a crucial role in shaping Ireland's future, our communities and our economy. In my previous role as a councillor and a community activist, I saw firsthand the transformative impact of strong female representation at all levels of society. But we also know that much work is needed to achieve true equality. Prilash Kankorlia, equality is everyone's business. While International Women's Day is about celebrating women, it is also about recognising the need for us all, men and women, to work together to break down barriers. Gender equality is not just a women's issue, it's a societal issue, and it requires real commitment from us all here in this chamber and beyond. As we mark International Women's Day, let us reaffirm our commitment to ensuring that women's voices are heard, their rights are protected, and their contributions are valued in every sector of our society. Táime Chomit Chave ag Tridge Sean Gohan Inish Godakdinya. I am committed to an Ireland of equals, a new Ireland built on fairness, justice and opportunity for all our people on this island. Guramila Mila Mayogov.
Thank you. And I call Kelly Armstrong.
Much, Deputy Speaker, and congratulations to Aoife on her maiden speech. I can remember the day when I made mine here. It was on a budget debate to Martin O'Muller, and his response, unfortunately, was not as kind. But I did it to an untimed, debate on legislation, so I didn't have the nerves of meeting the time either. So well done, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I rise today. I hadn't intended to speak, but I just thought I would add some information to the House on this debate. Many years ago, actually before I became an elected representative, either as a councillor or as an MLA, I spent some time with colleagues across all parties under the then Speaker, Mitchell McLaughlin, looking at barriers to politics for women. And we concluded at that stage that it wasn't a case that when the electorate have the opportunity to vote for a woman, that they didn't take it, because many women who are put in the ballot are elected. What was happening was that there was a disparity between the parties. And we spoke to all parties at that time, my own party, every party. And one of the things that came forward is that when you ask a woman, is she interested and will she stand, she's more likely to do so. And recently we had an event in the Lawn Gallery organised by the Women's Caucus, where actually at the table I was sitting at, all of the women from all different parties admitted that they had been asked by a man to step forward for a political position, and had been successful. But why a man? If we're talking about accelerating women, then I think us as women need to do more to encourage our sisters to come forward and to do likewise as we have done. Now, it can be a very difficult thing to be a woman in politics and leadership, and others have mentioned about the difficulties with social media, the bullying, the trolling and all of the nasty side of things. But it comes with such benefits. We can make changes across Northern Ireland when we come together, and we have come together to do amazing things. And some of the work that's being done today by all of us on domestic violence is testament to that. But in order to accelerate women and gender equality across Northern Ireland, I think that we're missing a trick. I believe that the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, hasn't been included enough in the underpinning of all strategies and policies across Northern Irish Government. If that was included, then everybody would have to think, what are we doing to eliminate discrimination against women? I sit in this place, and while it's not a bad place to be a woman in, I am sick to the back teeth of somebody having a difficulty with the term chair. because they'll call a woman Madam Chairman and different things like that, and I just don't get why it's so difficult. So there's a wee bit of a difficulty here in this House. The other thing that we do, which is really difficult as a woman to understand why we cannot get over this, is how we measure Section 75 impacts. Our equality impact assessments that are brought forward for policies and strategies look at who we are not doing damage to, when in actual fact, if it was turned around and all government departments, including all of ourselves as elected officials, were asked to actually say how we are making improvements in equity under Section 75, how we are ensuring that women, that older people, people with dependents, have productive and proactive issues being brought forward so that they are equitable. That would be a massive change. If we want to accelerate gender equality, then we have to put our shoulders to the wheel. And part of that is to actually do progressive and proactive actions to ensure that equity is as important as equality. And I have to say, as someone who represents housing, look at domestic violence. We have victims fleeing domestic violence, but because their perpetrator is on the lease of the house, it's the victim has to leave. Is that right? I think if we're going to accelerate and protect everyone and have a gender equal society, then we need to rethink some of our policies. Thank you.
Thank you. Call Jerry Carál.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I want to extend solidarity to all women this International Women's Day, and commend the work of the caucus and the chair for moving this important motion. It's also worth remembering in the debate, Deputy Speaker, that International Women's Day, of course, has deep socialist and feminist and radical roots that shouldn't be forgotten. It came out and was first celebrated in 1909 by the Socialist Party of America to mark the New York garment workers' strike the year before, a women's strike. And of course the role in women in 1917, a few years later, in Petrograd, demanding peace and bread, such moderate demands but so relevant demands today with the way the world's going, and leading an anti-war movement and also toppling a Tsar whose family was in power for hundreds of years. And of course not to forget the role of women on this island 100 years ago and longer, taking up the fight for rights of land, rights in the workplace, and so on and so forth. And women won freedoms in countries, many countries, as I mentioned before sort of so-called capitalist countries had the right to vote for women, equal pay for women, equal work, divorce and free nurseries, and abortion rights as well. And the theme of this year's International Women's Day, as has been said, is to accelerate action. And I think the executive's work on women's liberation could be described as the polar opposite. To take just one example, the North is experiencing, as we've heard, an epidemic of gender-based violence, with 25 women disgracefully killed since 2020 alone. And education and prevention is obviously crucial to ending gender-based violence, but requires education and prevention also. And that requires political will and investment that the executive seems fundamentally incapable of allocating. It's also worth thinking about, Deputy Speaker, what kind of change we do need. Better representation of women in positions of leadership is obviously important and valuable, but unless feminism improves the everyday lives of all women, it will be worth nothing to many women, most women, all women. Too often, conversations about sexual assault and harassment and gender-based violence gloss over the wider context. And to make it easier for women to leave those toxic workplaces and abusive relationships, we need transformative changes to our current economic and political system. We need a strong welfare state. It defies belief that women still can't get financial support to leave abusive homes or abusive relationships. We need strong trade unions, which women are at the heart of, the majority of the workplace. We need fair pay, universal free childcare, accessible healthcare, and safe, secure and affordable housing. And we need to eradicate poverty and exploitation. Still no anti-poverty strategy, and the women take up the brunt of this, bear the brunt of poverty and current responsibilities. Gender inequality will always exist, Deputy Speaker, under capitalism, but we should also recognise that sexism is propped up also by a toxic culture of misogyny that should be called out. We need to dismantle that culture and use every opportunity to challenge deep-rooted beliefs and attitudes that characterise women as inferior. These beliefs and attitudes aren't outdated, unfortunately, ideas that died out with older generations. They persist in a different form and in some ways a more aggressive, well-funded form. Young men are falling prey to online right-wing agitators, and occasionally we hear some similar arguments perpetrated in this House, who spew regressive and reactionary ideas about lots of people, but especially women, that they belong in the home and women's bodies are the personal property of men. Trump and Tate, to name but two. And in reality, women have been and always will be at the forefront of those the biggest struggles for change in our times. And in recent years, Deputy Speaker, it has been women leading strikes in health and education and many other sectors. Women are also leading the Palestine Solidarity Movement, Mothers Against Genocide, just one example of that. So it's not enough, in my view, my party's view, to settle for better representation alone and empty corporate slogans. This won't achieve women's liberation. We need to unpick the foundations of women's oppression and fight for a future without war, poverty, inequality and exploitation, just like those women did over 100 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Call Carál Hunter.
And I too would like to welcome Aoife to the Chamber. It's great to have another woman on board, and you did very well today. It's a pleasure to stand today and to contribute and to celebrate the women in and around my constituency on International Women's Day, and to share some of the uplifting things that they do to really take care of the people within our community in East Derry. Every day across my constituency, women are brave, women are bold, and they help others while struggling themselves and sharing their stories online. And I'd like to mention a few of those incredible women here today. I'd like to thank Selena from the White Butterfly Foundation, which is devoted to offering compassionate, personalised and professional psychological support to parents grieving the profound loss of miscarriage, baby loss and neonatal death, sharing her own painful story and using it as a power to change the lives of others. I'd like to thank Olivia McVeigh for being so open online about her struggles on the agony of endometriosis, talking openly about her treatment of early menopause in her 20s and her journey with alopecia. I think it's so brave, tackling the stigma that often comes with these health issues and breaking down barriers so other women who endure them feel seen and feel heard. I'd like to thank Taylor Ray Faulkner for opening up about the difficult journey of female infertility, which is often a deeply personal event and issue, but she shares so well online. I'd like to thank Laura McNeely for her advocacy, advocating for harsher sentencing for paedophiles here in Northern Ireland to keep the children in all of our communities safe, and advocating for law changes around this matter. I'd like to thank our very own Lily Sione Barr, the current Mayor of Derry, for her advocacy and her bravery after enduring horrific, ongoing racist abuse online. She is just incredible. I'd like to thank Val in Portrush, who works for REACH, a community support network sort of driven by women, to be honest, which really focuses on tackling loneliness, helping the vulnerable, and they utilise every moment of their spare time to give back to the community. I'd like to give particular thanks to a woman called Becca, who works in the West Bank Community Centre and who really offers a safe, non-judgmental space for so many young people and young girls to come forward and to ask for help. And I'd like to thank Grania in Feeney, who does incredible work at Destined, which is a group that does incredible work with our adults with special educational needs in our rural communities, serving Feeney, Park, Dungiven and Claudy. This year's theme is accelerating action to achieve gender equality and end bias. A huge part of that is educating the public on female mental and physical health issues. And on that note, I would like to thank the brave women around this chamber who have shared their loss and their stories of baby loss and miscarriage, like Orleah Flynn and Kelly Armstrong. And I'd also like to thank our very own East Derry woman, Claire Sugden, who spoke so eloquently publicly about her journey with postpartum depression. I'd also like to thank Joanne Bunting for sharing her story of having breast cancer and being so brave to speak about that. You know, every day we're in here and we shout and we yell at each other, but I do sit with quiet admiration for many of the stories that are shared in this place. And it's not only educating me, but I know it really is educating the public. So I would like to thank those ladies for their contributions and coming forward and sharing their personal stories with their own struggles. Their bravery is noted and I thank them for it. I'd also like to thank Women's Aid, Nexus, Rape Crisis NI and the SOLA team supporting women who are victims and survivors of rape and sexual harassment and assault. When we talk about accelerating action, we need to create a society that really adequately supports victims, and sadly in the north of Ireland less than 2 2% of cases to do with rape result in a conviction, and I really think that that is disgraceful, and no one should fear the process of seeking justice when it comes to a sexual crime. Currently in Northern Ireland, rape counselling notes can be used against victims in court here, and I really feel strongly that this must change. Lastly, I'd like to dedicate my speech today to the women and the girls of Palestine who have endured such unbelievable violence, trauma and agony over the past 513 days. Women who have witnessed their loved ones die, be wrongfully imprisoned, women left with no food to nourish their children, pregnant women left without nourishment, without water and without hospitals and appropriate healthcare. I am thinking of them today and every day. Their potential, the barriers to fulfilling that potential, and the cowardice from both the current and the former UK and US governments in adequately speaking up and supporting them. My hope is that we can all continue in our positions to platform the struggles of women locally, here in the North and globally, to ensure that one day we are all equal.
Thank you. I now will call Linda Dillon to conclude and wind up the debate on the motion, and you have up to 10 minutes.
And I want to thank everybody who spoke on today's debate. It is my privilege as a member of the Women's Caucus to wind the debate, and as I say, I thank all of those who have contributed, and I think we have to give special thanks today to Aoife that this was her maiden speech in the chamber, and I think we will all agree that it was a very strong speech, and that just shows the strength of the women in this chamber, which is really, really good place for us to be. So just in terms of the contributions, I think that obviously Aisling mentioned the need for a women's health strategy rather. I think that is really, really important, and we have heard from the Health Minister there is going to be a women's health action plan, and that's really appreciated, but we do need to see something coming forward. We need to see that soon. And we only have to listen to the contributions from Cara Hunter about all of the struggles in terms of women's health to know how badly that is needed. Connie Egan talked about the threat of gender-based violence, and we know that the most dangerous place for a woman to be in Western Europe is in their own home in the north of Ireland at the hands of somebody who's supposed to love them. Diana Armstrong outlined the importance of women being in leadership roles and women's voices being heard. Sinead McLaughlin spoke about the importance of the APG on UNSCR 1325 and raising gender equality issues, and I think we can be in no doubt that they are doing a good job, and it is really important that that is continued. So I want to thank Sinead and all of those on the APG for the contribution that they make in terms of that. Aoife Finnegan spoke of being a proud South Armagh woman, and I'll join her in that. I am also a proud South Armagh woman who is now proud to represent the women and men and everybody right across Mid-Ulster. And she's determined to raise her voice for the people in Uri and Armagh. She spoke of the transformative impact of strong female leadership and gender equality as a societal issue. Kelly Armstrong spoke of the need for women to ask women to be elected and to support each other in that. And in that I absolutely agree with you, because I've done it. I've went and I've approached women and asked them would they consider being elected, and most recently in council elections 2 women agreed to do it, and they were both elected, and they are outstanding women, both of them. So I am really, really proud, and I have to say the men around them supported them, and that's really important too, and I know that a number of those who spoke referred to that, so I think that is really important. Jerry Carál mentioned the women of Palestine, and Cara also referred to her speech being dedicated to the women of Palestine, and I think that that is really poignant for us, particularly today, whenever we hear that there are meetings happening in Cairo to address what will happen in the future in Palestine. And let's hope whenever they're addressing that they are considering the women of Palestine. And I think it was Cara Sinead mentioned Lillian Sione Barr, and she gave us an education actually at the event that was held for the Women's Caucus upstairs, and I couldn't stay for the entire event, but at the table I was sitting at, Lillian was there, and she talked to me about the advancement of women in politics in Kenya and what they have done over a long, long number of years, long before anybody was doing it. And this is in what people would consider to be a developing country. Well, they are well developed, let me tell you, ahead of all the developed countries in terms of how to promote women in politics. So I want to thank her for that on that day, because it was an education in itself. Shara Brownlee mentioned inspirational women in sport and science, and I'm glad she mentioned that jockey, because I back her every opportunity I get, because I want to see her winning. And I think it is really important to see those women in those leadership roles and showing people that they can do it. And we all know that they had greater challenges getting to those positions than any of their male counterparts. But again, in many circumstances with the support of their male colleagues and their friends. So I suppose in terms of this place, one of the things I want to mention, when I first was elected to here, I wanted to see gender quotas. I was told that couldn't be done. So I looked at what other ways could we consider and urge more women into politics in this place. And I thought, what about if we created something like proxy voting so that women could have maternity leave? And I was told, absolutely not, couldn't be done. It might look like, you know, self-preservation. Well, I was a woman in my 40s with one child. I was pretty sure I wasn't having any more. So I think it was not anything to do with self-preservation, but I did think it was important, and we needed, if we wanted to encourage young women into politics, to actually make it possible for young women to come into politics. But when COVID hit and proxy voting was for everybody, it could be done like that. Not a problem. And thankfully, because that is the thing that it took for us to be able to start the journey of getting proxy voting. And obviously we are now looking at hopefully our male colleagues potentially getting paternity leave and those who have long-term health problems. But I do think it was really important in terms of that proxy voting rather, for maternity leave to allow women, because we have a number of female colleagues. Kate Nicholl, obviously, at the moment, and I can't think of anybody else at the moment, but there may be some that we don't know about. But I do think it's really, really important. We can't say we want more young women in politics, but we'll do absolutely nothing to encourage more young women into politics. So we as a caucus know the power of listening, engaging and discussing. I've already outlined that in the most recent event, that hearing from Lillian was an education for me. And we aim to work collectively to create change, to use our voices to empower one another. We've been delighted to recently engage with so many other women in public life and the women's sector to discuss how we can stand strong in our power, to represent and lead without having to break down unnecessary barriers, and feedback from those events will help us to pave the way for change. We want to promote gender equality and political representation as essential and achievable with the correct targeted action. And I know that quotas is not for everybody, but it worked for our party. So I'm going to say consider it, because if you're looking around you and everyone around you is male, then something is wrong. And you have to ask, what can you do? That doesn't mean those males are bad. We have a lot of time for you, but it is it is important, yes. Well, actually, I really welcome the males that have come to this chamber today. I have to say thank you very much for coming here and supporting your female colleagues. It is very much welcomed. So I know I speak for all of my caucus colleagues when I say that I am leaving the chamber this evening feeling uplifted, with a renewed commitment to ensuring we as elected representatives keep extending the ladder of participation as we strive for a truly representative political landscape. This International Women's Day is a worldwide call to acknowledge strategies, resources and activity that will positively impact women's advancement, and that includes the contribution that was made by Kelly in terms of looking at CEDAW and ensuring that that is brought into many more of our what we do here in this place, much more of what we do here in this place, and to support and elevate their implementation. I call on this Assembly to accelerate action by reaffirming its commitment to and support for gender equality. And I like the word accelerate, because to me accelerate means go faster. So let's go faster. Let's make this happen faster. Let's us make the place that we leave a much better place for our daughters, for our nieces, for our grandchildren, granddaughters, hopefully. And I certainly don't want it to be the place that it was for our mothers and grandmothers, because it was a difficult place to be. But I still will say, and I think it was mentioned before, that I certainly am, the woman I am today because of my mother, my grandmother and their mothers, and the women who fought in the most difficult times here. And I think of all of those that went through the mother and baby homes, all the mothers, women and girls that went through the mother and baby homes in particular, because those women went through the most difficult times, but some of them are the very strongest women in our community. So I want to mention them especially here today.
Thank you, and thanks all members who have spoken. So members, the question is that the motion standing on the order paper be agreed. All those in favour say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Moves us to item 6 on the order paper, the adjournment. The question is that the Assembly do now adjourn. The Assembly is